Hey everybody, it's Tim of Broken Dice. This is second part of my Rome Iberian campaign. Um, this is the diplomatic phase of the second round, I guess we'd call it. Not like a turn in a battle, but more like the round of what's going to happen next. So we're going to go over a couple of things. We're going to go over the campaign map choices, the diplomatic ratings, and the results of those diplomatic ratings. Okay, here's my campaign map. And obviously this is not my map. I did not create this map. I will not take credit for creating this map. I found it on the internet. I thought it would be useful, and therefore I have just kind of going to use it for my own purposes here. Okay, diplomatic rating for quick little review. Each territory is given a random diplomatic rating. I do this because in tribal societies, you can have a lot of ongoing animosity between tribes, and they may not be so eager to get involved in somebody else's troubles. And with the Romans, on each turn, I give them a random diplomatic rating. So depending on their behavior and that sort of thing, in history, they were horrible. They acted horribly in Iberia. But so that's why I give them a random rating. So in certain turns, like these first two turns, I've rolled fairly high for them, and so at some other point in time, they may have a low diplomatic rating, and then therefore assistance may be more forthcoming for uh, their next intended target of invasion. But in this turn, or this round, I should say, we'll try to keep rounds for what's going on the campaign map, and the term turns for when we're going from turn 1, 2, 3, etc. in an actual battle scenario. Okay, so as you can see on the map, there's 3 territories that are kind of bordering the Susitani. That is the province that the territory that the Romans just took over in the first game. It's a small territory, so I just did one big pitched battle to determine its fate. And so Rome won, barely, but they did take over. So now they have choices to make, where to go. So as you can see, the Leitani, they have a diplomatic rating of 6. If Rome was to choose that one, they may have a hard time keeping them from getting aid from some other territory. But as it turns out, I rolled a die 3, basically. I gave each one of them a number, rolled a die 3, and it came up the item, I'm going to butcher this name, the Elercavones. It's got 2 capital I's, Ercavones. So my Latin is not very good, so but that's the territory that Rome has chosen to invade. And you see they got a diplomatic rating of 2, where you can see here at the top left of the screen, Rome's diplomatic rating at this turn, this round, God, I got to get that straight in my head, is 5. So we roll a die 6, add that to the current diplomatic rating, and that determines whether an ally, whether one side or the other gets to influence this ally to render aid or not to render aid to Rome's next invasion target. So we did the roll off, and obviously the Cavones, whatever you want to call them, they failed to garner any assistance from their neighboring tribes. So we have to move on and see what we're going to do next. Okay, so looking at the map, we can always tell that this territory is a little bit larger, and so therefore probably more involved, has a larger population. If you look on a topographical map, there are a lot of large rivers in this area, so they're going to come into play. There were larger settlements in this area because of the river systems. So I've given this a little thought. So again, randomly, I rolled a die 4 and picked that number of battles that it will take to subdue this territory. So I rolled a 3, which equals 4 battles. And so then I needed to come up with, well, what kind of battles do we want to fight in this random sort of setup? Uh, so I came up with 6 battles, and we'll go over these individually. Uh, First one is a pitch battle, and we've all played that. That's just where we got everybody on the table. We got our 3 or 4 divisions, however you want to break your army up, and then the army commanders are on the table. Therefore, you put them at risk when you put them on the table, especially for your tribal sort of area, because that leader is very important politically, because your resistance to Rome could die with the death of that army commander. So you got to kind of be a little bit judicious. Rome is just going to crank out somebody else to come over and take over the reins, but tribal societies, that personality, that leadership, that was not easily replaced. Okay, the second one is an ambush. Now, sticking with Hail Caesar rules, I am going to set the parameters that the ambushing force must be 1 division strong. Whatever army component that you have. I mean, obviously you can do this over different time periods, and therefore your army composition may change a bit, but it's going to be a division. The opposing force that is being ambushed must be at least 3 divisions strong, and to assist or to give some sort of reward for this action to the ambusher, any ambushed unit that is destroyed cannot participate in the next battle. So let's say that the Iberians are ambushing the Romans. If the Romans lose like a cohort or a unit of cavalry, then they will be down that in the next battle, whatever it is. So if the ambushing unit does not successfully destroy a unit, that is their goal. They have to destroy something. If they cannot get that done, then it counts as a loss. And seeing how the Romans have to fight and win 4 battles to subdue this territory, the ambushes, it is kind of a risky venture for the Iberians. Okay, escalation. Now this can also be called like a meeting engagement and all that kind of stuff, but I like to have that term where it describes that kind of small meeting at first between 2 forces where they're not sure, and then all of a sudden you just get that drawn in for the larger battle, and it happens piecemeal at the beginning. And so I've added some parameters. On the first and second turns, the division that's on the table for both sides use individual orders, or they move by initiative. The rest of the armies don't deploy until turn 3. So there can be that feeling of like, there's some things happening, we're not sure, and then all of a sudden it just starts to ramp up and gets, out of control of what one of the army commanders probably really wanted to happen. Gettysburg is a fine example. Different battles. Oh gosh, it's either Cynocephaly or Pinda, which I think it's Cynocephaly, where in Greece where the Romans were fighting the Macedonians, and it kind of started off as a small like encounter between skirmishers, and then kind of got carried away, and then the next thing you know, it's a full on battle. So it's got, I'm looking for that kind of feel to it, and that's why I'm restricting the movements and the divisions and deployment, and so it has to basically escalate over the the turns of the game itself. Then we go to call for aid. Now this is different than an ambush. This kind of flips the script, where you have one division and it's holding like an objective, whatever objective that you want. It could be a camp, a village, a fort, a bridge, whatever. But it has to be something defensible. You know, they have to have some form of walls or high ground or something that makes it plausible for them to defend, because that one division is going to be trying to hold off the entire army until help arrives. And in this scenario, we're going to use the off-table rules on page 32 in the Hail Caesar rulebook for those extra divisions. Because you can look at it as that, you know, they're holding a camp and the rest of the army is somewhere else or at a distance, and so therefore it could take time for them to get there to help, so you got to hold out. Yeah, it will play a little bit differently, I would imagine, with different forces available. But for the Romans itself, it wouldn't be, you know, too hard for them to hold a camp. But for the Iberians to hold a village or a river crossing or something like that, that would be interesting too. So we'll see how that plays out. But that's one I'm looking forward to doing. Reserves. Now I'm going to play this a little different. This is like, oh, let's think of Caesar at Pharsalus, where he noticed on his right was very weak. His cavalry force was very weak at Pharsalus. The Pompeian force had a tremendous advantage in cavalry. So what Caesar did, he was able to take some cohorts and kind of move them behind his cavalry. He used his cavalry as a screen for them. And so you got to remember that cavalry at this time was not the impact cavalry of later centuries. The stirrup wasn't invented yet. They fought differently. They were great for running down light troops or fighting other cavalry, but against heavily armored infantry, that's a whole different ball game. You just didn't run headlong into them. So we can look at it as something like that, where you're taking units from a division, you're making this ad hoc force, and the only sort of caveat I put in here, a parameter, is that only the army commander can issue orders to this sort of ad hoc division. Now, what I'll probably do is I will randomly roll for each division in the army to see what kind of unit they give up. Even, odd, high, low, I haven't made up my mind yet, but some sort of random way of picking a unit and putting it in that division. And a minimum of 4 units, because you want to make it like a division so you can give it a division order from your army commander. And then we go to sieges. Since Hail Caesar doesn't have its own like particular siege rules, what I suggest is, and what I'm going to do, I have several books that have rules for sieges in them, and I'm going to pick one of those. But I'm not going to use any rule in it that supplants the Hail Caesar rules. I'm just going to use it as an addition to try to create a fun game and a fun scenario. So now what we need to do is we need to roll a dice, find out what this first encounter is going to be, and then get ready to play it. And hopefully I'll have that all ready to go by next week because let's see, what is today? Oh, today's Friday, the 14th. So it will probably maybe be the end of next week that I'll get this all in because it takes, depending on what I roll here, it could take several turns to get it finished up and get all the results down. So let's roll a dice and let's see what we come up with. Ambush. Okay. So, in keeping with the theme of the campaign, the Iberians will be ambushing the Romans. So, it will be incumbent of them to be able to try to destroy a cohort, some artillery, some light troops. They're going to have to destroy something, a unit. And I might even make it to where it needs to be. If they destroy some skirmishers, I don't think it's going to really change the output of the game. But cavalry, artillery, and that means your scorpions really, because unless we're going to be doing a siege, and that'll be a different kind of thing, or a cohort. You know, that sort of thing I think would be beneficial to the Iberians to take off the table and reduce the force of the Romans for the next encounter. So that's the end of this video. Hope you all like it. Leave a thumbs up if you do down below. Give me a like. Leave a comment or a suggestion. I'm open to those. And hopefully everybody stays safe, stay well. I'll get this ambush on the table. We'll see how it plays out. And I'll see you next time.